Oh, yeah, sure.
Sue is here. And I think we have a quorum. Obviously, I was the last one to join. I'm so sorry. Okay, so I'd like to call.
This conference will now be recorded.
I'd like to call to order the special meeting of the South Burlington City Council. Excuse me, a few minutes late at 6:11 on Monday, June 8th, 2020. And the first item is an agenda review. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes in the order of business? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to questions and comments from the public not related to the agenda. Anyone want to speak? Okay, go ahead. Please tell us your name.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Wonderful. My name is Shayna Take, and I live at 1440 Williston Road. And as a member of the Champlain Valley Democratic Socialists of America chapter, I wanted to lift up the Black Lives Matter movement in this current time by reading their defund the police statement, if that's all right.
Okay, we actually have a resolution. Well, it isn't about Black Lives Matter. So yes, please go ahead. You may read it.
I was wondering if it was related or not.
Well, it's
I'll
somewhat
read
related,
it.
but it's a little bit different. Go on. Go ahead.
Thank you. Okay. Hashtag defund the police, May 30th, 2020. Enough is enough. Our pain, our cries, and our need to be seen and heard resonate throughout this entire country. We demand acknowledgement and accountability for the devaluation and dehumanization of Black life at the hands of the police. We call for radical, sustainable solutions that affirm the prosperity of Black lives. George Floyd's violent death was a breaking point, an all too familiar reminder that for Black people, law enforcement doesn't protect or save our lives. They often threaten and take them. Right now, Minneapolis and cities across our country are on fire, and our people are hurting. The violence against Black bodies felt in the ongoing mass disobedience, all while we grapple with a pandemic that is disproportionately affecting, infecting, and killing us. We call for an end to the systematic racism that allows this culture of corruption to go unchecked and our lives to be taken. We call for a national defunding of police. We demand investment in our communities and the resources to ensure Black people not only survive, but thrive. If you're with us, add your name to the petition right now and help us spread the word. And I'll provide a link to that in the comments or in the chat for transcriptions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from the public not related to the agenda? Okay, then let's move on. I'm sorry.
Sorry. I wasn't sure if the resolution was going to deal with. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can. What is your name,
sorry.
please?
My name is Maddie Larkspur, address 5 Executive Drive, number 2, South Burlington. I wasn't sure if the resolution, the George Floyd resolution, was going to cover defunding the police, but I wanted to talk about that now or then, whichever is more appropriate.
Why don't you, well, that's the next item. So why don't you wait and we'll have the presentation of the resolution and take all of the public comment on that. Is that all right?
Okay.
Rather than have you
Yep.
lead off, we'll lead off with the resolution. So thank you.
Okay.
Stay tuned. Is there anyone else? Okay, seeing or hearing none. Let's move on to item 3, which is consider and possibly approve a resolution related to the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and the protests and the violence that has occurred in the aftermath. And Councilor Barrett.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. So I put together a resolution. It's short. I did email it to everybody, including Kevin. I hope you all have copies of it. Do the counselors have copies of it?
Well, it's on the
Yes.
screen.
It's on the
Yes,
screen
it's
too.
on the
So,
screen.
but
Yeah.
I mailed it out as an open office document, and then Helen couldn't open it, so I re-emailed it as a Word document. So why don't I just read it for everybody? Is that good?
Yes,
that
that's
yes?
good.
Okay. So whereas George Floyd was killed on May 25th, 2020 by a Minneapolis police officer who knelt on Floyd's neck for more than 8 minutes while he was handcuffed and lying face down on the road. And whereas the killing was recorded by bystanders and those recordings show Floyd pleading that he couldn't breathe. And whereas Floyd's death is the latest in a long list of African Americans killed in encounters with police, and whereas a National Academy of Sciences report found in 2019 that African American men and boys are 2.5 times more likely to die in an encounter with the police than their white peers. And whereas the senseless killing of George Floyd has sparked outrage and calls for justice nationwide, therefore be it resolved, the City of South Burlington, the City Council of South Burlington strongly condemns the murder of George Floyd and stands with Black and brown people in our country seeking justice. And be it further resolved, the City Council requests that the South Burlington Police Department review its policies and training to ensure that this type of police behavior will never occur in our city. Now, as a side note to this, I know that the Burlington police and the mayor have been working on a use of force policy change. I forwarded a quick tweet about that to Kevin today. Kevin is thinking that perhaps the state is going to probably have their own policy change. Kevin, did you say that?
Yes, it looks like the state is moving in the direction of having a statewide policy on use of force. I sent you our use of force policy, Tim.
Yeah, thank you. So my intent in this resolution was to start the discussion with City Council about how they want to address the killing of George Floyd and the plight of African Americans in their meetings with police in those situations where they have died, and how do we want to express our own outrage, and how do we turn it into an action that seeks to ensure that we don't have a repeat like that in our city. Now, back in 2016, when Mr. Castillo was shot in his car, Trevor Whipple was the chief then, and Helen and I had him come in and talk to us about the policies that were in the training policies that were in force at that time with the police department, and he presented to us. And then since then, Chief Burke has presented to us, and then again he has written a very long statement that was posted on social media, and I think also by the city, that tries to outline his sympathies and his work that he takes very seriously with the department to ensure that everybody is treated fairly. And so I just want to make sure that in lieu of what happened in Minneapolis, that we really are trying our hardest to make sure that we are not hurting people unnecessarily. The problem with police action is very difficult, because sometimes you have a suspect or a person that needs to have a use of force, and sometimes they don't. And I'm not a police officer, but from what we have seen in the past for the treatment of many African Americans, that there's a disproportionate number that suffer greatly at the hands of the police. So I just want this resolution to kind of review how we feel about it and what we can actually do or ask the police department to do to assure us that they're doing everything that they can. That's all I have to say, and I'm open to any changes you'd like to make to it. That's what it's on the agenda for.
Okay, I would just like to make a quick note before we get into this conversation that, if there are any members of the public who are on the meeting and they want to participate in the discussion, they'll be allowed to. I just would request that they try not to interrupt the meeting with music or whatever. That happened last time, and it took me by surprise. But I hope we can have a civil conversation about this and hear everyone and not have the meeting interrupted. So why don't I turn to council members to determine your answers or responses to Tim Barrett. Are there any comments?
Yeah, it's Dave. If I could just make a couple of comments. First, Tim, thank you and excellent job. Second comment, the first resolved, where we say condemns the murder of George Floyd and stands with Black and brown people. Shouldn't that appropriately today say people of color? and that is more encompassing? And doesn't that?
That's
wouldn't
a
that be-
that's a really good question, Dave. I borrowed pieces of the whereas clauses from other communities' resolutions,
Right.
and I liked the wording there better than people of color. But I'm open to changes. It depends on what other people think. So.
Well, I just bring that up because that seems to be the standard protocol and what's considered proper today, because it's all encompassing. And I'm fine either way, but I think maybe people of color tosses out a broader net, because if we say with black and brown people, that's great. What happens when if somebody who is of a different color or Asian, why aren't we, or Native American, why aren't we including all those folks as well? So I bring that up. And then where you say seeking justice, I think I just made a quick note, perhaps equality and justice, because justice doesn't necessarily connotate equality. So I think maybe the word equality should go with justice, seeking equality and justice. That's my total suggestions.
Okay, are there other comments by counselors? Do you like those amendments?
I would add,
We're not hearing you.
Well, she's garbled to me.
no, seriously.
You're garbled to me too.
You're echoey garbled. Like last time.
Nope.
So Megan, maybe I'll just say my quick comment and then you can maybe try whatever you've done to fix it before. Tim, I think the resolution's great as is. I'm fine with also Dave's comments. I do notice in the chat window, a public member has a response to people of color versus black and brown people. So I'd love to hear what they have to say too. But I support the resolution. I don't know if it's warned for action tonight, but thank you for putting it together.
You're welcome. Thanks, Tom.
It's warned for action tonight, Tom. Megan, can we hear you? And then I will get to Maddie, who wants to make a comment.
Can you hear me? Or is my sound garbled? Okay, I'm gonna.
Megan,
Are you
if
gonna-
we can't hear you, maybe you could pick up your telephone and call Helen, and then she can
Or
repeat
she-
what you're suggesting, perhaps?
She could call on
Or
her
she
phone,
can-
too.
She can call into the meeting and turn her mic off. I mean, I do know that much. I don't know much.
There must be a chat function here. She could type it too. I don't see where the chat function
Well-
is in the meeting.
Right.
There is one.
So while we're waiting for Megan to call in, can we hear Maddie's response, please?
Hi, yes, Maddie Larkspur. I introduced myself earlier. She, her pronouns, please. I think this is one instance where generalizing is not what we want. I'm sorry.
There's something wrong.
Maddie, we're having,
Somebody has to mute.
Hang on.
I think that might be Megan. Megan, if you have your
Likely-
computer on your phone live, just
Megan.
you can turn your speakers off of your
There we
computer.
go. All good.
Okay. Yep. Hi. This is, I think, one issue where specificity where generalizing is actually counterproductive. This is a sort of the Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter thing. It's specifically the police violence against African American people, against Black people, that is so disproportionate, and I think that it feels to me kind of watered down to, and not that there's not issues with police brutality against people of other races as well, but I feel that the specificity here is more specificity is better than less here. I also have other comments about the resolution, but I can hold those.
Maddie, what do you think about seeking equality and justice instead of just justice?
And I think also being able to live in freedom. I mean, I think that if we're going to go to include equality, I mean, I've been paying, a lot of attention to what people have been saying, and I was really struck by comments that I heard where white people tend to be more concerned of losing freedom, whereas Black people tend to be continually hoping to eventually enjoy freedom, which was a very striking comment to me. And so if we're going to expand on it, I'm willing to pass it as is, but if we're going to expand on justice to include equality, I would also say something about the enjoyment of freedom.
Well, there's no harm to that I can see. It could say seeking whatever you just said about freedom, just equality and justice. I mean, all three of those are strong terms. I don't see any reason not to include all three. And I'm fine with what Maddie said, make a valid point that this is should be more specific. I'm okay with that. I just brought up my suggestion because that's the term that seems to be generally used on the broader population. But if we want to be more specific here, that's fine with me.
Okay, well, Megan texted on the chat that it's the, what is it again? The enjoyment of freedom. So the recommendation is for the first resolve to perhaps stands with Black and brown people in our country seeking justice, freedom, or the enjoyment of freedom and equality, and be it further.
That's
For
fine.
justice, equality, and the enjoyment of freedom. That's a
Okay,
longer.
seeking justice, equality, and the enjoyment of freedom. Do you have that, Sue? And now let's go back. Are there any other comments by counselors? I thought it was a strong statement. I think it's really kind of short, but very focused. And the fact that the final resolve really requests and identifies something that South Burlington can really do versus it being, for the world kind of. So I like the fact that has an action item. Because I think that's what people want is a little action.
I guess one thing that dropped from my mind as I was thinking about this afternoon is the question of recruitment. There's a number of studies showing that one, it's been kind of in the agenda of white supremacist groups to infiltrate police departments throughout the country. I also heard a former, I believe it was Tampa, Florida police chief, who's now the mayor, and I might have the city not wrong, but say that out of 100 applicants, they can seriously consider 2 or 3 because of this issue. And so in addition to review its policies and training, unless the policies include recruitment, I think something about recruitment, since we're revising this, might be helpful, might be meaningful.
Uh-huh. Well, I might defer to Kevin, but I do think we will have the police chief in to discuss this. And at that point, we can certainly request that the work include recruitment. We could put it in here as well. What do others think?
May I comment, or is this
Yes,
still,
you may.
Go ahead.
This is Maddie. Yes,
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
Maddie again?
Yes.
Megan, thank you so much for bringing that up. I think that's a wonderful point. I think I'd like to lend my support to Shayna's original statement at the beginning of the meeting about defunding the police. If you look at the South Burlington city budget for 2020, a budget of $8.44 million. And this is just based on some cursory research, and I'm not an expert. So that I may be missing things, but it looks like the overall budget, $8.44 million. Of that, $5.11 million was devoted exclusively to the police department, which is over 60%. Just to the police, not to roads, not to other critical infrastructure, exclusively for police. That is, and here we are talking about having a budget crunch, not being able to pay for schools for our children. I think South Burlington needs to really take a hard look at their fiscal priorities and look into decreasing that amount of money, maybe holding off on recruiting altogether. Just absolutely minimizing the role of the police in the community. Minneapolis, the city of Minneapolis, city council, 2 days ago voted to completely dissolve the police department and look into other community-based public safety methods. I'm not saying we need to go that far, but I think that's something to keep in mind as well. It would also be if, putting a complete hold on recruitment is out of the question. I know that one of the ways that dangerous police officers stay being police officers is they hop from district to district. And I'm not sure what the South Burlington City Police Department's policies regarding looking into histories of use of force, complaints against officers, but that would certainly be something to look into as well, making sure that we if we do hire new police officers, that they're not people who were fired from other police departments for being brutal, for being for hurting and killing people. That's all.
Thank you very much. Other comments from the public? Is there anyone?
No.
Okay. Counselor, I'll start out and just say very simply.
Sorry. Helen, I said yes, but I didn't click on my mic. It's Michael Mitchell here.
Okay, Michael?
One point about recruitment, and that is that psychological evaluation of new recruits should be the top priority, because that will likely reveal some aspect of a candidate's propensity to violence. So the psychological evaluation should be the very top priority when recruiting and interviewing potential officers here.
Thank you. Was there someone else who wanted to speak?
Yes, this is Jimmy Lees. One of the things I noticed in Minnesota was that the Minnesota ACLU requested, and actually they got some progress with this request, recognizing that the prosecutor in Minneapolis had very close ties, as most prosecutors do, had very close ties with the police, because prosecutors generally rely on the police in their everyday activities to collect evidence and to do all the things that are needed to make to testify at trials and so on. So there's a very close relationship, and what the Minnesota ACLU called for was for an independent special prosecutor. Those were the terms that they used. Someone who's impartial, independent, and not affiliated in any way with the police, not someone who relies on them. And I think that would go a long way towards resetting the thinking of police, because at the currently all over the United States, police have a huge amount of impunity. They can get away with this sort of thing, whether it's directed against whoever it's directed against, whoever their misconduct is directed against. And although there's disproportionate impact on Black and brown people, actually a majority of the misconduct is directed against white people, but it's very disproportionate. I think in 2015, 40% of the people, unarmed men who were killed, were Black or Hispanic. So this is something that can concern everyone in Vermont, wherever you're living. And we've had numerous instances in the last 15 years of people being killed by police. And so I think that one of the factors in all of those cases was that the prosecutor who decided not to prosecute in almost every case, decided not to prosecute, was someone who was affiliated in some way with the police. So I think that it should be a resolve clause, something along the lines that in the event of an alleged police misconduct, that an independent special prosecutor be appointed. And that was done in Minnesota. I think they brought in the state attorney general in that case, who was far removed, much further removed than our attorney general, who's actually pretty much associated with the police. I think in our case, it would have to be someone much further removed. The one in Minnesota had been a congressman. His name is Ellison. He really, I think, was in no way associated with the police. Much bigger state, and really didn't have any association. But I think in Vermont, we would want to pick somebody, let's say from the criminal defense bar or the civil rights bar, or someone who does civil litigation, and is not really, and who can bring in an independent perspective. And I think that would do a lot to set the minds of the police that they're not going to be able to get away with things with impunity.
Okay, thank you. Other comments from the council on any of the issues raised?
Well, it's Dave again. I think similar to the first resolve, we could do something similar with the second resolve. It says the city council requests that the South Burlington Police Department review its recruitment, operating, and training policies. And that way we've got the word operating in there, and we've got recruitment in there, and we have training in there. I don't see any harm in that, and that might seem to capture some of the comments that we've had. So review its recruitment, operating, and training policies.
That's a motion.
What do you think of that, gang?
Yeah.
I think that those issues will come up when Chief Burt comes in to review those policies, and we can bring all those items up. I'd like to keep it more generalized if possible.
Resolution. I don't see any.
One at a time, please. Tim, did you finish your comments?
I did. Thank you.
Okay. David, you have an additional comment?
Oh, I'm sorry, Tim. I thought, I can't see through the print here, so I couldn't see. I don't think there's any harm in putting those right in the resolution, because in effect, we're talking about operating and recruitment and training, which are three core purposes of the police department or responsibilities. I don't think there's any harm in putting them in here. Again, that's my opinion, but expanding with meaningful words is in my mind okay. And it's up to the rest of you. Tim, would that be all right or not?
My sense from the last comment of Mr. Lees is that that's really an issue that isn't necessarily something South Burlington can change. I mean, we don't have a prosecute, whatever you call it. We use the state's attorney, do we not? Minneapolis has a couple million people. We have 18,000. So I think that's a very important point to make, but I think we're the wrong audience. And I also, to just respond to another comment someone made about defunding the police, I am not interested in supporting defunding our police. I think we need police. I think the citizens of South Burlington would be, most of them anyway, would just be astounded if we defunded the police. And I think what makes more sense is for us to become, potentially the example for all to follow about how we recruit and train and develop policies for our policemen that makes this kind of behavior impossible to occur, or very unlikely to occur in our city. Others?
I'll add on to that, Helen.
Okay, Megan?
Yeah, I had some time to think, because a resident had asked if we would consider defunding the police in an email that he wrote to me. And I I think that there's always room for improvement. So I don't want to let anyone think that I believe that our police department is off hands and that there is no need to review. But I do tend to trust the chief when he says that they have embraced the 21st century policing guidelines that the Obama administration had put into place. Very few forces follow those guidelines. So the fact that ours does is meaningful to me. And I think, central to those guidelines is that instead of being warriors, they are guardians. And there's also the additional aspect that we have as a city included in police work, which is to include Howard Center employees that go alongside the. I'm sorry, I have two children that are not to be here. I will move in just a few minutes. Sorry. That, for instance, and I gave the example of the Vermont State Islamic Society and the letter that we received from Imam Hassan, who was very effusive in his gratitude toward our police chief and to the way in which he reached out to their community in order to make sure that they felt welcome, that they felt that their needs had the full attention of our police department. And I think that, I don't want to again hold out there that there's nothing for us to review, but I think that if I had any reason to believe that our police was in some way losing the support of our community, because they're only effective if the community trusts them, right? I don't sense that in South Burlington. I'm not saying that we're perfect, however. So, and I've heard community members say, I'd rather work with this officer as opposed to other officers. So I understand exactly, the issues that could be leading them to say that without knowing specifics. So that's why I am more in the camp of let us review, let us continue to put pressure, let us continue to make sure that there is supervision. So that's where I am right now. So I tend to agree with Helen.
Okay, are there other counselors who would like to weigh in? And then Maddie is asked to make one more point.
I'll just comment that I concur with both Helen's remarks as well as Megan's remarks.
Okay, and any other comments? It sounds as if everyone at this point, and I'll let you make your last comment, Maddie, like the expansion to include equity and whatever the word is.
Justice and enjoyment of freedom.
Yes, and that we, and then we also, in the final resolve, to include recruitment, operating policies and training.
Just to review, it's operating, recruitment, and training policies.
Okay.
We'll have to change that whole sentence a little bit.
And the first resolve is equality, not equity.
Equality. Did I say equity? I meant equality. Okay.
Well, it's a little hard to do this like this, but that's it. It's coming out good.
Those are pretty, there's significant changes, but the verbiage isn't too difficult. And where are we with persons of color versus Black and brown people? I sort of like the Black and brown people.
I would like to leave it like that too, please.
I think we agreed to leave that.
Okay, great. Were those all the changes then?
I have my
So
comments,
Maddie wanted to respond. Okay, what is your comment?
I actually now have two comments because of something that was brought up about the defunding the police. I'm sorry. I'd like to clarify what would be meant by that. But first, I have another thing that I wanted to mention. I've found that much of the issue is regarding the, well, let me just send, I'm going to send something to the chat, but I'll read it aloud as well. This is a proposed addition. Whereas many protests nationwide have been met with unprecedented and horrifying levels of further escalated police brutality, resolved, the City Council of South Burlington strongly condemns the egregious violence committed by police departments nationwide. This would be, for example, we don't have to specify this, but something like the Seattle Police Department that has been shooting using less lethal crowd disbursement techniques, using tear gas in the middle of respiratory pandemic, using LRADs, which are sound weapons that can cause permanent hearing damage. In Minneapolis, there was a reporter who lost her eye. I think that it's very important that the city of South Burlington condemns police action. Broad departmental police action.
Okay, thank you.
What is I also wanted to. I wanted to share a graphic. Not a graphic. An image. It's like an infographic about what defunding the police would look like, and it's not just saying, "All right, screw it, we're done with police." Like it's anarchy here. It's not that. It has to do with slowly finding alternatives for police rather than saying, oh, every time you call 911, a police officer shows up, there's a gun, there's potential for escalation. There's other options besides that. And I think that that's more what is meant by defunding the police. I apologize for that.
Well, Maddie, I would just respond that I think Megan Emery identified an actual example of that we've implemented in South Burlington. So I think we have, and it came about, this kind of mental health assistance and training for the officers really is an excellent example of finding other ways to deal with domestic violence or people on the verge of suicide or attempted suicide, and that I think this council and this city and certainly our chief as well as the police officers are very supportive of that approach, and that is really finding other people to assess and assist in situations where drawing a gun only makes it worse. So, if that's what you call defunding, we have added money to successfully do that. And so we didn't take it away from the police department and say, oh, you got to cut an officer so we can fund this. We found the money to do that, to really assist them. And I think the stats show that it's very successful.
And we expanded it too.
And we expanded it, yeah. We have one just for our community. And our police chief has been working diligently with efforts to have public education and outreach about sexual and domestic violence. So without, using force, but it's education and how you can attend to that before or in a better way than it currently is handled in many places. So that's my 2 cents. Anyone else?
Yeah, can I make a comment on that last resolve where we added the word operating? That encompasses a number of the things we were just speaking about. I don't think it helps us by making this too long and drawn out, because my experience shows that the longer resolutions are, the less attention people tend to pay to them. So shortened to the point, I think, is better. Let me just say one other thing. in regard to funding of our police department and the size of our police budget, it's important to remember that South Burlington is not an oasis. We have a lot of retail, including University Mall. We have a lot of restaurants, a lot of hotels, and we have Shelburne Road, Spear Street, Dorset Street, Heinsberg Road, Williston Road, all feeding through the city, bringing people in from points afar. And so that will have an impact on our police budget, because we're not going to let people from outside South Burlington come flying into town at 80 miles an hour when the speed limit's 35 or 40. And so we need enforcement that perhaps a community that stands more isolated does not need, and that costs money. And I just thought it's important to remember that, because we do have a lot of people in South Burlington that don't actually live here. And that's just a point in passing.
Okay, thank you, David. Are people, who's waving their hand? Is that Jim?
Sandy Dooley.
Oh, Sandy Dooley, I'm sorry. Sandy? Turn on your mic.
Here we go. Sandy, do you have a mute on your microphone itself? Is there a little button on your headset?
Well, while she's figuring it out, just to add that I did receive copies of some policies, and are banned in South Burlington. I thought I would add that, because I know that some people are calling for the banning of chokeholds, and our police department already has that banned.
Sandy, can you speak now?
Oops.
No? Well, maybe she can type in the chat, but I would like to sort of move along. We've already been in session since we started late because of me, an hour, and I would like to, we have two other resolutions and an executive session. So,
Sorry, may I interrupt one more time?
pardon me, is it some additional information? Because I think you've shared a lot with us.
I just wanted to see, I don't feel like the city council weighed in on my, I put in the chat, the proposed addition to the resolution that I feel like is very important, and it's something that I'd like to see on.
Okay. Is anyone interested in adding this further resolve about the egregious, the whereas and the resolve?
I have no difficulty with it. I would be willing, if others are willing, to include it.
Who else? Tim? It's your resolution.
I'm not in favor of that right now. Thank you.
Okay. Tom?
I'm kind of neutral on it. I guess I just hadn't really thought of it about it prior to the meeting. So,
Okay. Dave?
I'm kind of where Tom is. This is the first time I've seen it, and we have to read through the whole thing and make sure we're not replicating anything we've already got in there. We're not going to get that done in the next 10 minutes. Right. So I don't have a problem with it. I don't, but I'm neutral on it. Doesn't,
Okay.
If we want to get this done, we have to get, we need to move along with it. If we're willing to take more time, then we can go back and look through the whole thing again and see whether we have to change wording in other parts of the whereas so that we don't come across as having a jumbled up resolution, if you know what I mean.
Okay. I guess I'll weigh in with supporting Tim. And what I like about our resolution is that it is focused as a response to George Floyd's murder, which is just emblematic of what has happened in many other places, maybe not exactly the same way, but and I think it's been quite a tipping point for this nation, and I just as soon keep our focus on that. And I think we've expanded our view a little bit. And I'm happy with our amendments. And I think we could spend all night adding a lot of different whereases and resolves. So it doesn't look like, Maddie, that at this point in time, we're going to embrace that, but I certainly appreciate your comments and your passion for this and interest. And I think we all share the concern that you have expressed.
Yes,
So with
thank you for listening.
the
So just to clarify,
resolution,
Council is not interested
Maddie?
in condemning the violence by police departments nationwide?
We're not going to add that, correct.
So you're not condemning, you support the violence committed by police departments nationwide?
No,
I think that is quite a jump of your assuming what we think. And I just don't think that's fair. No one on the city council, I'm quite sure I can speak for all of them, and as well as the city administration and the police department, that we aren't horrified by this, and we strongly condemn that. We're focused on this slightly smaller. Well, if it's superficial for you, I'm sorry, but this is what we have before us with the several amendments is what I would like to move on. So do I have a motion to approve the resolution as amended?
So
I will
moved.
make that. I will second that motion. And if I could just make a comment, Maddie, I'm not done with this conversation. And we're going to have the chief of police come in and talk to us. And we need to continue to visit this. So just know that I sense your concern, and your wording is not offensive in it by any means. We just want to ponder it. And so why don't we consider this again as we go forward? And the South Burlington City Council is going to pay a lot of attention to this, as we have already, but we will continue to look at this.
Oh, I'm sure the whole state of Vermont and all of its police forces and the state police are going to be looking at a lot of the outcomes from the protests nationwide, and will probably be making changes.
Well, they are tasked with that, as I understand. According to Kevin, they're working on it.
Right.
The state will. So there's no question in my mind that we won't have some recommendations of training and recruitment and level of force used that will hopefully improve things. So we have a motion. I'm sorry. Who's C?
It's Megan. Sorry.
Oh, Megan.
I was just going to say I wanted Maddie to know that I liked her recommended language, but that this is not unprecedented for this council to prefer shortened resolutions. In fact, I've had my own resolutions slashed just for brevity's sake, and so I hope you do not take this personally. I did not take it personally when it was my own resolution. So
I thank Maddie for making the suggestions, but my point in this resolution was to be very, very focused on George Floyd's death and what the city can do to prevent it from happening in our city. That's the most important thing. Is I just want our police department to treat everybody fairly and not hurt people unnecessarily. And that's the most important thing. Is I really don't want anybody hurt when they shouldn't be.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. Is there any further discussion by council members? Okay, I'll call the roll. Megan Emery?
Aye.
Tom Chittenden?
Aye.
Tim Barrett?
Aye.
Dave Kaufman?
Aye.
And the chair, Helen Reilly, votes yes. So we have approved the resolution as amended. And thank you to all those who called in and shared their views. We appreciate that. Even when we don't take all your, oh, what is wrong with this? Come on. Here we go. Nope, that's not it. I'm sorry, I'm trying to find the agenda. Okay. No, not it. Okay, so the next item is consider and possibly approve a resolution related to asking the city of Burlington, Burlington and in / Burlington International Airport to apply for grant funding to support active noise monitoring at the airport consistent with the noise compatibility program. And Megan, this is your resolution. Can I just apprise everyone of what actually has happened since you wrote this? Or would you like to present it first?
No. Please surprise us.
Okay. Well, I just want everyone to know that there was a press conference. It's the mayor of Burlington has them, I guess, every Monday. And both Mayor Christine Lott and myself and Gene Richards, the director of the airport, were part of this segment of his conference, press conference. And at that time, he announced that last week the airport did submit an application for 100% funding for noise monitoring from the FAA. And I was very pleased about that. I think it reflects Gene really listening to the public and to us. And he's never before, I think, applied for 100% funding. He also sent a really pretty strongly worded letter to the National Guard suggesting that since this really was a result of military flights, that the Guard and potentially the U.S. Air Force should, since they have the capacity to monitor the noise, that they should implement this at our airport. The proposal that was submitted included, I think it's 20 monitors or units that would be spread across Burlington, South Burlington, and Winooski, and funding for 5 years. It was a little over $1 million. And whether it gets funded or not, we won't know. But Gene and the mayor did commit to continuing to work to find funding for the monitoring. But I still think we should go forward with this resolution. So, Megan?
Yeah. Well, let me see if by chance my microphone will work. I will try. Just a moment.
All right. How do I sound? Hold on.
Oh.
No. No good?
No good.
All right. Darn. Okay.
All right. Well, that's okay. I'll just have this next to my ear here. So after being contacted by many residents of South Burlington, but also of Winooski and Burlington, I put together this resolution in order to just make a formal request that a grant request be submitted by the Burlington International Airport's director to the FAA, hoping that would just really confirm the public's interest, because if the legislative bodies are willing to take that step, that I think that meets a level of proof that there is a level of public interest. And I sent it to colleagues in Burlington and to Winooski. I did not make anything up here. The whereases have come from previous resolutions. I took a couple of additional information from press articles, most recent press articles on, the number of F-35s, as well as an email that we received about the fact that the airport has been eligible since 1990. So anyway, all of this, I just want you to know what the sources are. And it's just, making a formal request. And Winooski passed it a week ago. I was very pleased about that. And then we received an email from Helen confirming that the Burlington International Airport director had, in fact, made the formal application, and we saw his email to her. So that was very hopeful. So my hope is that by passing this tonight, as is my hope, we will simply be boosting that grant request made on our behalf by the airport. So short and sweet, hopefully.
I will move to approve the resolution as presented.
I will second that.
Okay, is there further discussion?
Well done.
Okay, great. Yeah,
Excellent.
good. So are you ready for the vote? Okay, I will call the roll. So Megan?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Chinden? Tim Barrett?
Aye.
Who else? Dave Kaufman?
Aye.
And Helen Really Chair votes yay. So the resolution passes 5-0. Thank you very much, Megan. I think it's always helpful to formally approve something, and this may in fact help the FAA decide that in fact they can support this fully. So thank you.
That's my hope.
So, yeah. So moving on to the next item, and this is consider and possibly approve a resolution related to the wearing of face coverings in public locations in South Burlington. So we have, was this the original one that we didn't pass that requires it? We have a couple resolutions. Right?
Yeah.
This is the original one that we didn't pass. Tom has some additional language, correct?
Correct. I shared via email that was relayed out to all of you. Basically what the city of Montpelier passed. It's very consistent with what we have. Just the one exception is it includes some exceptions. I just couldn't comfortably support comparing smoking, the act of smoking, with the act of not wearing a mask, because there are filters there that I love the exceptions in the Montpelier clause, which recognizes that under 2-year-old children should not be mandated to wear a mask, because there are concerns with that, as well as the other exceptions. So I really like Montpelier's language. I think it stays true to the heart of what ours is trying to accomplish. And I sent that to you all via email. I don't know if it can be presented on the screen or if you'd like me to read it aloud, but I would like to move that we amend the resolution to replace the last "be it resolved" with the "be it resolved" clauses from Montpelier, with replacing the city of Montpelier to South Burlington, and also changing that, adding that one word "must" that I think Dave Kaufman added.
Right.
So you're okay with our 3 whereases? Is that correct?
Correct.
Because they had slightly different ones, I think. Okay. And
But Tom, I can't see it right now. Could you read your last further resolve for comparison?
Paul, can you magnify, please?
Tom, can you email it to me, or can I give you the screen so that you can share what you're describing?
Sure. Why don't I forward this to you? And,
okay, if you forward it to me, I'll bring it up right on the screen for everybody.
Okay.
It's more lengthy.
it is more lengthy.
It is lengthy, but it's well considered, and I think it also addresses the fact that food establishments, which now can be at 25% capacity, they can't wear a mask while they're eating. So I just like what Montpelier did. I'm looking for that note you sent me, Dave, with your revision. I can't seem to find it, so I will send you this, and then we have to add Dave Kaufman's suggested changes.
The must wasn't a suggested change. You left a word out.
Yep.
And Montpelier did then.
And you didn't change Montpelier to South Burlington.
Right.
My apologies. I just sent it to you, Paul.
Well, it's about time we started submitting, resolutions about Montpelier.
Indeed.
There's no way we can see these side by side, right?
Do you have it, Paul?
Well, I have the resolution that was the last one we had on my iPad, so it's not exactly. This is hard to read. Okay.
You'll notice where it still says City of Montpelier. That needs to change to City of South Burlington. It's in the first sentence showing at the top, starting June 9th, 2020.
Don't scroll so fast. I can't read that fast.
I think he's going to put it into a Word document so it's more legible.
We're back to George Floyd.
New document.
I should have worked with you in advance, Paul.
All right.
I apologize for using all
Sorry,
your time.
everybody. Just making it a little bit more legible for everybody, and I didn't realize that all that was happening live.
Thank you, Paul.
Hang on a second.
Well, while Paul's fiddling with it, let me say that I think it's important that we do this and we do it right away. I'm not happy with the number of people I see going into and out of, especially the couple of retail places where I happen to do curbside pickup that are not wearing masks. And I think that's inconsiderate and unfortunate. And I think mandating it hopefully will make a difference.
I like that this also requests that the businesses posted in the window. I mean,
Yeah, I
I
like
went
that
into
too.
the Market 32 the other day, and there's a big sign, and there were two women in front of me. One had a mask, and the gal with her didn't, and she turned to her and said, "You have to wear them, so you have to go back out to the car and get your mask," which she did.
So the two tweaks, Paul, that David would like to see, and I fully support, in that first paragraph, we need to change City of and change Montpelier to South Burlington. And then in that same paragraph, later on in the sentence, I'm going to read through it. So that invites the public into their premises for the purposes of receiving services, purchasing products, or otherwise conducting business. Must. He wants a must right there, and I fully support the must.
Must.
So that's the amendment. It's right from Montpelier. If we need to give attribution to there, I just think it does a better job of addressing some of the exceptions that are inevitably going to have to occur.
Okay, and then you have some other exceptions, right? Yeah, exceptions. Yeah, I think those make sense. That makes it clear.
So I don't know if you want a motion to amend or how you want to move this forward, but I would move to amend the resolution to replace the last be it resolved clause with this entire excerpt.
No, you're going to make it effective tomorrow.
You want to make it effective tomorrow?
Isn't that what you originally put in there, Tom?
It is effective tomorrow, but I gave till next Monday for the signs to have to be required. If you want to require the signs tomorrow,
but the resolution's effective tomorrow.
correct.
Yes.
But I felt that would be terrible if we, passed something that required signage the next day. So
Yes, no kidding.
Let's go with it. I make a motion that we approve the original resolution as amended.
Is there a second?
Will there be any discussion of this?
Okay. Well, let's have a motion and a second, and then we can discuss. So do I have a second?
There was a second.
Oh, okay. So further discussion, someone would like to, I don't see any pictures on my screen now, so I don't know.
Yeah, this is Ray Gonda speaking.
Oh, hi, Ray.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I don't know how to get my picture up on the screen here. These buttons don't seem to be working properly, but I think this is an important resolution, and I fully support it. And I just want to simply add some of my own observations to give extra motivation for this resolution. And that's that yesterday I was at a local store that's a chain franchise. And there's a sign when you walk into it that says, "You will not get service unless you're wearing a mask." And that appeared to be true a couple of weeks ago, but yesterday, fully half the people in there were not wearing masks. And I addressed that issue with the first clerk that I saw, and he said, well, that's corporate. We really don't have any control over that. And I said, by saying one thing out there, then telling me that you can't stop customers from buying here. I said, you're breeding disrespect for your company with such a contradiction. I do notice that box stores, although I see a few people without masks, by and large, most people are wearing masks in places like Lowe's, Costco, Home Depot, Walmart. Many aren't, but the vast majority are. But some of the businesses, the business I just referred to a while ago, fully half the people in there were not wearing a mask. And I think that's so reckless at this time. We're not out of this coronavirus thing yet, and we may not be for quite a while. And I think these people are really jumping the gun and getting very careless.
Okay, thank you.
I
Any other comments from the public? All right, are you ready for the vote?
Helen, can I ask a question quick before
yes.
the vote?
You may.
This Montpelier language is replacing the second resolved clause or both resolved clause?
I just thought the second was necessary, but if you're seeing an issue with the first resolve clause.
No. It's just this pertains to the second resolve clause. Okay. That's what I understand.
It replaces the second resolve clause. That's what the amendment was.
And before you vote, could the council discuss or consider what is the enforcement expectation from the city or from the police? Is there an expectation that there will be some type of an enforcement?
This was Tom's concern with the previous resolution, right?
Yeah.
I'm more comfortable with this because it has reasonable exception.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have expectations about that. I think this is, it's a very, very strong statement that we feel that it's really important for businesses to require masks except for the exceptions cited. And it was similar, frankly, to how we dealt with the election the last time. Although we had an alternative you could vote outside, but I think there's alternatives. If your supermarket doesn't make you wear it, there's lots that will.
I was kind of hoping, Kevin, that something would surface from the chief about what he'd want the enforcement to be or not to be. But I mean, is that something we could address after we pass this resolution to react to it and whatever consequences might come up?
Well, I think it puts the police, if there's an expectation that the police are going to be in any role of enforcement, I think it puts them in a very difficult position. And I would advise against it and hope that the public will take the resolution from the city council as it's meant to be, which is strongly worded that you need to wear a mask in public.
May I?
Megan?
I agree. Yeah, I agree with Kevin. I really think that this has to be peer pressure. I certainly don't want the police to be moving in with this.
Yeah. May I?
Michael? Yes?
Yes. I think once this resolution has been passed, the council might approach the South Burlington Business Association for them to impress upon their membership the importance of enforcing this mask wearing requirement in their establishments. And I agree with Kevin and Ray that public shaming in some cases and asking the right question or telling a merchant, if you don't enforce it, I'm not going to shop here, that'll go a long way. I think we've seen a lot of people not wearing masks, but by and large, I think South Burlington residents have done a good job. But the South Burlington Business Association could help.
Okay, Kevin, did you want to say something else?
Nope, that's
No?
good.
Okay.
That's good.
Okay, because your little circle around your letters shown.
Oh,
Are people
no, I'm typing something
people ready? Are people ready for a vote, or is there more discussion? Okay, if you're ready for the vote, let me see. There's some comments. Let's see. I don't know if there's more.
I was answering, I hope she saw Diane's question.
Oh, okay. So if you're ready for the vote, I will call the roll. Dave Kaufman?
Yes.
Tim Barrett?
Aye.
Tom Chittenden?
Aye.
Megan Emery?
Aye.
And Helen Reilly, chair, votes aye. So it's passed unanimously. Thank you. All right, so the next item is consider and possibly approve a resolution authored by the Vermont League of Cities and Towns calling on Congress to allocate fair and direct federal support to all of America's communities, regardless of population size. Kevin?
Thanks, Helen. VLCT is asking all member communities to have their legislative bodies consider this. It's very straightforward. The resolution pretty much speaks for itself, but it is to be sent to our congressional delegation and ask that they continue to work on a bill that would provide support to municipalities that have been left out of prior COVID-19 response bills. And staff recommendation is to support.
Okay, thank you.
I move to
Is there?
resolution.
Okay, so Tom is moving the resolution. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Tom Chittenden?
Aye.
Barrett?
Aye. Aye.
Megan Emery?
Aye.
Dave Kaufman?
Aye.
And Chair Reilly, aye. So it passes unanimously. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Okay, item 7. Consider and possibly approve a name for the city building to be located at 180 Market Street. So we did come up with sort of a smaller list, and we were asked to think about it. And I think, Patrick, do you want to suggest or at least share with us what the library board has considered? I think all of us have gotten a number of emails from the public. At least I have, and I think they were addressed to all of us.
Helen, before Patrick speaks, can we ask Kevin, is there a length limit, a font limit on the space where we can write something? Do we know what the constraints are? Sorry, Patrick, I just got to ask this question because.
No worries.
Tim, I think that the versions that I've seen that speak to both the city hall and library seems to be a common concept floating around would be allowable in size on that front facade. I think if that's the direction the council goes, I think the facade can accommodate it.
But we don't need to build an addition on the end to keep going with the.
That would be poor planning, wouldn't it?
Yeah, sure would. Okay, we'd need more money. So we have a motion and it's been seconded, correct? Who seconded it?
Not yet.
There's no motion
Patrick
yet.
wants to speak.
Okay. Okay, so further discussion. Oh, Patrick, I'm sorry. Excuse me.
Okay. I think the short answer to your question is, as a trustees, we haven't had a vote on this, but we've had a bunch of email exchanges, and I know some of you have received information. I think the essence of the note that I sent to the city council earlier, and I think I copied Kevin and Tom, and is that I think we believe that making sure that the South Burlington Public Library is in part of the name, so that people know that it's there. I think over time, if there's an opportunity down the road to do something special with a naming opportunity, we can always do that, but this allows us to continue to seek potential donors to name the library. And it also gives the community some place to know that this is where the library is, where City Hall is. And as my email said, I think we can leverage those two critical resources in our community to make this the center, not just of our city, but the center of our democracy of our city. And I think that naming helps us to do that.
Okay. Any other comments or discussion? From all the things that I've read and talked to, I will just say that my preference is to name it the South Burlington Library and City Hall. You don't have to have just South Burlington Library and City Hall. To my mind, we wouldn't have that building unless we had the support of the community to build a new library. And I think the other additions were conceived as a way to accomplish a couple things that had been identified through a number of conversations with the public. If you recall, I don't know, maybe it was 7 years ago when we were talking about a recreation center and a new city hall and a library. And then the costs came rolling in and we consolidated this. And so we have the building we have. And I think it's important to identify the two main users. I understand or appreciate that there's an auditorium that could do different things. It could be sort of a performing arts center of sorts. And we also have a senior center, but I think the two big entities are the City Hall and the library. And I would like to see both of them in the name.
Helen, if I
And
could
the
make
word
one more,
public.
if I could make one more
too.
additional comment, I'm sorry. And Jennifer Murray, our director, is also on the call. The one thing I just would defer to Jennifer on is we went through quite a rigmarole when we moved from the South Burlington Community Library to the South Burlington Public Library. Those things mean something very specific. And I don't know, Jennifer, if you want to comment on whether the word public would need to be in the naming from our perspective. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I would definitely add the word public if there's room to put all this and still be able to read it from the street.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so can I add one thing? And this gets back to the historic.
Not if it's too many letters.
Well, that's the problem. I kind of thought back and it should say City Hall, it should say Public Library, but in the mid 1980s, and since for 35 years, we've talked about the need for a city center to South Burlington. And so I think that it should be city center. And followed by, it should be South Burlington City Center, and under that, City Hall and Public Library. That's what I like, just because we've been talking about a city center for 3 decades, and that's finally what we've got, and that's what it is. And so I'd like to include that, but I'm not going to live or die by it for sure. But I'd like to see South Burlington City Center, and right under that, City Hall and Public Library, if we can do that.
Can you hear me? This is Sandy.
Yes, we can.
Can someone share the shorter list? It wasn't posted with the agenda or even the motion. I'm clueless.
Well, we don't have a motion. I just said what I was interested in, and we're talking about.
I heard a list referenced. I heard a list referenced.
Well, there was a list the last meeting that was rather long.
I heard a shorter list referenced.
And we did come to some conclusion, I think, or we threw out some, I think, and focused on City Hall and Library. And I don't know if there were any formalized names on that. My understanding was, or what I thought we were asked to think about, is what exactly do you want it to say? And there was general consensus that City Hall was an important element or component.
May I make a comment, just a short one?
Sure.
Why do you need South Burlington in the title?
Just say City Hall and
City
Public
Center.
Library?
City Hall and Public Library, yeah. Something like that, but just get rid of South Burlington. Everybody knows it's in South Burlington once they're here. And if anybody references it in some literature somewhere, I mean, they will obviously add the South Burlington.
I don't know. I kind of like the idea of South Burlington in big bold letters above it, just to make it ours, but.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, for years, people have asked, where is South Burlington? Maybe we do have to tell them, Ray.
I don't know. I tend to agree with Ray. I think we should know that it's South Burlington. And I do like what Helen said, having the public library first and City Hall.
I like that too.
City Center, I'm really not. I know that some people have affection for it. I'm reading Patrick's email. I have to say I don't have any emotional attachment to City Center as a building. I have it as a place. And I already call it City Center without the building even being built.
I agree with what Megan is saying. We already have a city center. Everybody knows it's a city center. We don't have to write it on a big signpost.
I feel that way. Yeah. For me, it's not just the building. It's the park. It's the, the neighborhood. It's not a building.
Okay, Patrick?
I was just going to mention, I think the idea of not having to put South Burlington is a worthy discussion. My concern would be from the library's perspective on our marketing and our branding. When we reach out to people, we use that South Burlington logo and the South Burlington Public Library consistently, and then having the building have a slightly different name. This is going to create a little bit of challenge for us from a branding perspective because it will not be consistent.
So you're saying you would like the word South Burlington?
Yes.
So why not South Burlington City Hall and Public Library?
Well, that's what they would like.
Let's go with that. Forget my
not in that order.
Yeah.
Not in that order, David. I think they want the library first. So it's South Burlington Public Library and City Hall.
Right.
That would include the public that the library is more important than the work that you guys do.
I will move that we name the new building the South Burlington Public Library and City Hall.
Second.
Okay, and I had a question. Okay, I had a question from Sandy. She wanted to know what the library board recommended, and that's, while they didn't have a formal vote, Sandy, that's basically what they had a consensus on, is to name it the South Burlington Public Library and City Hall. And that's what was moved and seconded. Are there any other comments or questions of Tim and then Tom?
Yeah, I really wish you'd consider my idea of calling it the Altogether Center.
I just want to be clear that the is not part of the name. So it's South Burlington.
Exactly. Yes. Any other comments or thoughts
I'm a little
about this?
disappointed that we didn't get very creative with the name.
It's a classic.
It's fine. It's fine. But I was looking for something catchy, but it's going to be a monolith, so it should have a monolithic name.
Okay.
There are many opportunities for creative naming within the building. Tim, we would love for you to take part in that.
Yes.
Just contact Patrick.
Nice.
Yes, I think we do need to appreciate that once you walk into the building, there may very well be, and we hope there is, a special name, if someone wants to have the library named after them, that you would see over the door to the library. We're hoping that we'll find someone who will help fund the auditorium. And so it won't be just the South Burlington Auditorium. It will be, it could be the Tim Barrett Auditorium.
How much?
How much? I'll talk to you later. So there are those possibilities for different rooms and areas to have special naming. but we're going kind of generic with the this name. So is everyone ready to vote on that recommendation? No more discussion? Okay, so I'll call the roll. Megan, Emery?
Aye.
Okay, and just to remind everyone, we are voting on South Burlington Public Library and City Hall.
It's really wide.
So Megan says yay. Dave?
Aye.
Chair Reilly, I'm sorry. Do we need to clarify the ampersand versus the
Yes,
and?
that's a good question. I forgot to ask that.
Do we want the ampersand, or do we want the ampersand is the squiggly thing? I'm seeing the no.
Yeah.
So it's and A-N-D.
Well,
I could go either way.
It's more reading time, and it's a library.
Okay.
You know, I suspect that the architects might have ideas about font and lowercase and uppercase once you tell them, once this decision is made, and I suspect that they'll have a suggestion.
I mean, you could even have a dash.
Fair enough.
No.
Leave it
So we'll
undecided.
let the architects give us some outline. Okay.
No
So
dash.
I got
Yeah.
Megan, Dave, did I ask you?
Yep. Yes. Aye.
And Tim? Yes?
Aye, but we need to review what the architects come back with for the final. We need one more vote on what the architects suggest, okay?
Okay. Okay. Tom?
Aye.
And the chair votes yay. So we have a name for the new building. Thank you very much.
Yay.
Can I ask a
So
question?
I think that completes the order of, unless there's new business. Oh, I'm sorry. Raise the blade, excuse me.
I had a question about Tim's suggestion about the architect. I'm assuming that you mean that the architect design of the sign, not the wording, which is just
right.
Well, I mean, whatever they design, it could take our words and they might break it up or hyphenate it or slash it, but we need to see what their proposals are before we agree on what they want to do.
Need to see what it looks like.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. That's fine.
Okay. Patrick thanks us all. So moving on now to item 8, consider and possibly endorse the Raise the Blade project. If you recall, we had a presentation about that. It wasn't warned for approval, but it appeared that the council was interested in developing this relationship and being a Raise the Blade community and have some special signage. Is that still the thinking of the council? Barb Service has a comment or a question? Barb?
I do. I'm all in favor of anything that's good for the environment, but I went and did a little reading, and you know, Google is dangerous. However, I'm a little concerned that what I read said if you're going to let your grass grow a little longer and then mow it, it's not good to leave the grass on the lawn. It is better to bag it. And so I was a little concerned about what they presented last week and what that meant, particularly for our public spaces. It isn't as much, I mean, there also is there's a neatness factor. There's also the factor in public spaces of, I'm thinking more about parents with little kids walking on the grass. The grass is a little damp. They come home, they're covered in grass. Those sorts of things. So I'm concerned about our public spaces in terms of what this might mean. And I'm torn because I understand the environmental effect as well. But there were some articles that I read that said that leaving too much grass on the grass is bad for it, and that it will somehow make it buggy. And also, if there are weeds in the grass and you mow them and you leave the weeds on the grass, then you're going to get more weeds in the grass. So for what it's worth, that's what I learned. And I was a little concerned, and I thought I would just mention what I found in my reading.
Kevin, do you know if our mowers that the city uses mulch the grass when they're mowing? Because I kind of envision that, we cut it and we never bag it. It gets ground up really little and.
I don't think it's really mulched either, Helen.
Oh.
They use big mowers and they're going pretty fast. So my guess is they probably don't mulch as they mow. I don't know, Tom, do you have any thought about that on the athletic fields?
Yeah, I believe it's just cutting, Kevin.
But the athletic fields can be trimmed closer if you need it. They're exempted from this, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Remember that the
Barb,
presentation.
you have another comment?
Oh, Tim first.
Well, the presentation last week said that, they want you to cut it. They don't want you to cut it less than 3 inches. But when you do cut it, don't cut it more than 25%. So if you let it grow and it goes over 3 inches, keep mowing at your same frequency and you'll have the same amount of clippings that drop on the lawn. It's just that your constant height will be 3 inches. So that's the concept, is that if you've been cutting it at 1 inch every week, wait till it reaches 3, then cut it. But don't wait till it reaches 3 and then wait 2 weeks and then cut it. It's like from 5 to 3, right? No, it's just cut it the same frequency, but give it a break to get to 3. And once it's at 3, then you'll have the same amount of grass filtering down to act as a mulch and a fertilizer and all that stuff.
Okay,
David?
Thank you.
First of all, Tim, it's 33%, not 25%, just to be sure you've got that piece correct.
Thank you, sir.
Second of all, Barb, don't believe everything you read on the internet. Actually, if you cut properly, leaving the grass clippings on the lawn is very good for the grass. And there are going to be people that don't pay any attention at all, but it's a worthy program. It makes great sense environmentally. They're paying for all the visibility. So I would move that we endorse the Raise the Blade program with South Burlington as a participant.
Second.
Is there further discussion?
Yes, this is Ray Gonda.
Oh, great.
That the original letter for this came out of the Natural Resources Committee, and I wrote that letter. It was given to Dave Crawford, and since that time, I don't know what's happened since the Natural Resources Committee is no more because we don't meet the quorum requirement yet. But nonetheless, I'd like to relay my experience since writing that letter. And I have a lawn that's at least 3/4 of an acre on a 1.2 acre piece of property here. And it takes it with a 26 horsepower riding lawnmower, garden tractor, it takes me over 3 hours to cut my grass. I've learned something by doing that for the last 3 years. One is that it is not wise to raise the blade all the time. And one good example of that is in the early spring, when your grass gets tall enough to mow, in the early spring, you usually find that the weeds are outgrowing the grass. And you want to cut it lower at that point to try to kill those weeds, because the grass will just keep growing, but many weeds, it will either kill them or set them back so far the grass really overshadows the weeds. So there's got to be some flexibility in it. I would really discourage always cutting no less than, what do they say? No more than 3 inches off of it, or allowing 3 inches to remain. I would say allow some flexibility, allow the city to use their judgment on that.
Yeah, and this, there isn't going to be the grass cutting police either. Of course,
Yeah.
there's gonna be variation, right?
Right. But the point is that the idea is a good idea, but whoever is doing it is going to have to be able to exercise judgment to see what time of the year. The grass doesn't grow at the same rate all year long. It grows like crazy in the spring. And then in August, it hardly grows at all. And it's in the later part of the summer that you really want to try to leave it longer because of the dryness.
Barb?
Yeah, and my point was not to say we shouldn't do this. My point was really to say there are a lot of opinions out there and we need to sort of move carefully, but let us raise some community awareness and continue to get this going, but recognizing that we may need to make some adjustments along the way. And David, I do know that I don't believe everything I read on the internet. Trust me.
That was tongue in cheek.
And I read some things on both sides of this issue, and it's really more an issue of, I like the concept of let us move forward, but with a little bit of caution.
I think the person that presented it on behalf of the Lake Champlain Sea Grant made that clear, that this was not a set in stone policy. It was a generally good policy to follow, but there's certainly going to be exceptions, and I think that's what she said. And there's no enforcement. So it's a good thing to do, because if it helps just a number of people move more responsibly, it's better for our runoff and better for the lake.
Okay. Is there
quick thing? I had the blade lowered this weekend on my hair.
Me too.
Thank you, Governor Scott.
Okay.
I'm jealous.
Are we ready for the vote then? I mean, we understand it's a general policy and there's some flexibility, and people will do their darndest to follow good environmental approach to our lawn mowing.
That's really all it says. So let's do it.
Okay, ready for the vote? Megan?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. So we have adopted Raise the Blade, or endorse the Raise the Blade project for the city of South Burlington. Number 9, update on the proposed new date for a vote on the FY 2021 school district budget and how that relates to the setting of property tax due dates and related implications. So Tom Hubbard.
Hey, thanks, Helen. So as we know, the school district has their budget revote timeline for the fiscal year 2021 budget discussion tomorrow night. So I think we'll all know more after that meeting, and I know you have a BCA meeting on Thursday night. One of the reasons we wanted to bring this up at this time is we're at about that point of the year where the council discusses finalizing the tax rate and establishing the tax installment payment dates for the coming year. And I think the recommendation from staff is going to be, if the school board does move forward with a July vote, that we wait and see what the result of that vote determines. If the vote passes, it would allow us to send out one tax bill with the accurate information. It would probably delay it going out from the middle of August, which it typically is, until probably late September or the first week in October. That would be about a 6-week delay at the most for us. We feel that we have assets that can cover the costs without the need for us to borrow any money to do that. So it wouldn't cost the city anything if we were to delay the vote, especially having a budget freeze and a hold on capital spending, at least in the short term, moving into the new fiscal year. If the school vote fails, if the school board district budget fails, the city will need to send out a tax bill regardless. Our recommendation would be that we send it out right away. So if the school board vote was on July 23rd, let's say, it would probably take about a week to get those processed and into the mail. And we would have to allow 30 days for the payments to be made. We would have an accurate municipal tax rate because we know what that's going to be. The state would provide for us an interim education tax rate. That's what we would use. It would be based on what the current rate is, and we would need to once the school vote did pass or eventually passes, we would need to reset the school rate at that point. So maybe in a second installment tax installment, we would need to send out a correction on the education tax rate. So those are the kind of scenarios that we've been working through. We wanted to just kind of give you a general overview prior to your BCA meeting on Thursday night. This has been discussed with Donna's input, with Martha in the tax department, and with our attorney, Andrew Bulldog. So that's kind of just an overview, but happy to respond to questions that you might have about that in terms of what we're proposing at this time.
Okay, I have a question. It sounds as if the bill, whatever it looks like, whether it's an interim for the school and our number, is going to go out quite a bit later, and then it's due later. Will that affect the other dates, or will we, potentially have a tax bill that's due in September, and then a tax bill that's due in November, and another one in March?
Yeah, so the council has the ability to change that. So if we sent it out in, say, September, you could have the second installment due in December and then keep the one in March. So we could space it out that way. But you would be able to determine what the 3 tax dates would be. And we'd have a better idea of that after a vote either passes or fails for the next school district budget.
Okay, thank you. Tim, you had a question?
Yeah, normally the bills go out 1st of July, roughly, right?
Yeah, we make sure they're mailed out by the 15th, Tim.
15th of July.
So that August 15th is the
Right.
traditional tax due date for first installment.
So you said if the vote, which might happen on July 23rd, fails, you would send an immediate bill out, right?
Yeah, probably the end of July.
Okay. And with still an August 15th due date? Or?
No, it would have to be 30 days. So it would
okay.
it would probably be the end of August would be when that would be due.
Okay. Now, when does the state want their money? Their education?
Well, that's why the state allows you to have an interim an interim billing. They would still require their payment as of December 1st.
Okay.
For the first half of the year payment.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Dave, no, you just made some noise.
No, I don't know.
Okay, so we don't have to take any action. That was just to inform us. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks,
And
Helen.
is the BCA meeting this Thursday?
Yes.
I think
6
so.
p.m.
Okay.
And Helen, the question is, does the city council, we can't affect the BCA, but does the city council have an opinion about mail-in voting, or do we not want to get into that?
Well, do you want to get into it?
I don't know.
What was the price tag on a mail vote only? 23,000 plus or minus? Is that what it's
All
saying?
mail-in, according to Donna today, would be 40 grand if staff does the stuffing, versus 12,000 for a traditional like we did, 3 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, whatever. It seems like a month ago, but it wasn't that long ago.
Well,
One I saw 22.8, just shy of 23 somewhere, no?
She sent a new spreadsheet today where she calculated it all out, and she said it would be 40
I didn't see that.
if you pay, a service to stuff the envelopes, 35 if we do it. The city, I think the school district would love to have volunteer stuffing, but that's another whole ball of wax that I want to get into right now.
Right.
So basically it's 12 versus 35 if we do the stuffing, and then,
Right.
that's a lot of stuffing.
Well, I
Maybe
mean, I
for
think as a council, we certainly understand that we have a very, very, very tight budget. So spending excess receipts or more than is necessary is a problem for us. But I think this is a decision for the BCA.
But remind me, who pays that for the elections again? I keep forgetting. Is it the cities?
Taxpayers.
It's the city taxpayers.
Yeah, Dave's right. It's definitely the taxpayer pays. But in a case, Tim, where the vote is exclusively for the school district, both the Vermont League of Cities and Towns attorneys and the Secretary of State agree with Andrew's position on this, and that would be that the school would be required to pay whatever costs of the election that exists. And I know that Kevin has had communication with David Young about that, and that he understands that as well. I think the district may even be exploring that because of the COVID crisis and the need to have a different kind of voting, that there may be some possible outside funding to help them do it. So I think they're exploring those kinds of things, but there's agreement that it would be the school's responsibility for the costs.
Okay. So this is outside funding from the federal government, which the taxpayers support, correct?
I think that they may.
I mean, it's not free money, is it?
They would need to apply for that.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
I'll hold my personal opinion until the BCA meeting.
Okay. Well, we all have a vote on there and probably can be persuasive. Thank you very much, Tom.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Is there any other business?
Helen, if I could,
Yes.
Paul's got a quick update for you with some good news.
Oh, great.
Yes, this is Paul Connor. I'm excited to report that I got an email this afternoon from Al Karnitz of the Vermont Land Trust. Parcel A of the Eau Claire, so that's the east side of Heinsberg Road, 191 acre parcel. The conservation officially took place today. So it is now conserved in perpetuity, 191 acres. Just by itself, that 191 acre parcel is the third largest parcel in the city of South Burlington, behind the airport and the Belter Farm, which is mostly in the floodplain. So that's a really exciting day. The funding was allocated last year, and today it became official. So I just wanted to share that with you, and we'll make sure to get a press announcement out on that.
And we
hope. That's great. Thank you so much. Cheers to you. All right. So if there's no other business, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a need for executive session?
Yes, there is.
Yes, there is.
Is there a link somewhere? I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, no, that was sent to us.
In an email?
It's a calendar object, so it's on your South Burlington calendar.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so all in favor of adjournment? Aye.
Paul, can you
And
say
we'll
that again, please?
see.
I don't see it.
Aye.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
David, the number is 134.
I'll send it over to him.
He'll send the link, and I'll be able to.
Okay. Thank you.